You'd be surprised by how much people portray without words, especially when their faces are obscured by glittering masks. Standing at the back of the ballroom, I scan the crowd, noting the couples who stand closer together, bodies seeming to intertwine. I spot those who are straight-backed, stiff, chins tilted as believing they're above such parties. Then you have those who believe they are the party, shouting to everyone they pass and drinking constantly. I smirk. At least they will sleep soundly. Yet in the sea of jewels, my attention is fixed on the most precious. The crown princess wanders around, ruby dress flattering her fairer features and full curves. A jeweled mask leaves only her eyes and mouth exposed. At the high table, the king converses with lords and ladies, all the while keeping one eye on the ball. This is crazy, Astra murmurs from beside me, her midnight gown flattering her slim figure, falling straight to her ankles, jewels glittering at the shoulders and stomach. Auburn curls are swept into a half-up, half-down style that's both practical and beautiful. Cosmetics dust her lightly tanned skin, accentuating her high cheekbones and bringing out the sapphire of her eyes. It is, I whisper back, having to stop my gaze from lingering too long on her body. She's competition, I remind myself. What are you two lovebirds whispering about? A dark-haired beauty glides over and saddles up next to Astrid, golden dress shimmering under the chandeliers, offsetting her charcoal skin and midnight eyes. The usual, I drawl, whisperings of love and desire, things you'd rather not know. Cecilia rolls her eyes, and I'm satisfied when Astrid's mask doesn't quite hide the blush that creeps onto her cheeks. What do you think the final challenge is going to be? Astrid questions, avoiding my gaze. Cecilia shrugs. No idea, but something tells me it's not going to be pretty. Astrid's shoulders tense, and I have half a mind to wrap her in my arms and comfort her. She's strong. She's a skilled killer. Don't underestimate her. Yet, my body has other ideas. Honestly, Cecilia continues, I don't know why the king bothered with this kind of event. I mean, it seems a little over the top. Oh, my father is never over the top, Skylar answers, joining our trio. The princess's lips curve in a smirk. You should enjoy the festival. After all, it might be the last you see. Cecilia glowers at the princess. You would know. Skylar shrugs, clearly delighting in holding more information than us. Her eyes find mine, grin widening. Care to dance? I hesitate, but knowing to refuse could be more trouble than it's worth, I accept. I'm not much of a dancer. Skylar laughs. You'll be fine. I take her hand and join the others on the dance floor. Thankfully, years of practicing stealth and hours watching Astrid dance has made me light on my toes and quick to pick up steps. And you said you couldn't dance. I humour her with a smile. Beginner's luck. Maybe. What do you mean when you said this might be our last chance to enjoy the festivities? What do you think I mean? I'm not entirely sure I want to know the answer, fear and excitement tangling in my gut. Keep your wits about you, Skylar whispers, leaning close, lips brushing against my cheek. And don't trust anyone. She steps away as the music ends. Good luck. She slips away into the crowd, and I rejoin Astrid and Cecilia by the food tables. Both girls are in deep conversation, and Astrid's lips tighten as I approach. I pretend not to notice, try to ignore the flicker of guilt suspecting what she thought. Don't trust anyone. The king stands and silence settles over the ballroom. Good evening, and welcome to all. Tonight we are delighted to be joined by the Scarlet Guild's finest assassins. They are upon the eve of their final assessment and shall be demonstrating their talents before you this evening. There are 6 finalists. Each will compete against the other in combat. The winners of each round will advance into the next level. The winner will become my champion, an assassin for the crown. Princess Skylar shall announce the competitors. I told you something didn't sit right, Cecilia murmurs. First up, Cecilia and Tamara. A blonde-haired girl who's a good few heads taller than my friend grins as she steps forward. You may each choose a weapon. Skylar gestures to a rack that's being wheeled into the room, adorned with an assortment of weapons from swords and daggers to long sticks and maces. Astrid squeezes Cecilia's hand gently. Good luck. Cecilia nods before selecting a long sword from the rack and stepping opposite Tamara, who twirls 2 curved knives in her palms, bloodlust in her eyes. The onlookers have formed a large circle around the room, giving the 2 assassins space. The duel is won when one of you is knocked unconscious or is killed. There are no rules apart from not being permitted to leave the room. Skylar smiles lethal as she adds, Commence. Tamara strikes first, swinging high and then low. Cecilia brings her sword up to meet the first blade, leaping out of the way as the second swipes at her knees. Yet the long dress causes her to be off balance as she parries with a return thrust to the assassin's chest. Tamara sidesteps it easily, a whirlwind of darkness in an obsidian gown, blade glinting in the light. They should have told us we'd be fighting, Astra murmurs. The guards have an advantage wearing pants. Sounds like someone's nervous. Aren't you? Oh, of course not. I suppose the princess has given you a special pardoning. Jealous? But competition, Malik. Nothing more. Despite the words, her tone suggests she's trying to convince herself of the matter. Both girls are fighting like snakes, and Astrid gasps as Cecilia sends Tamara's blade clattering across the floor. The assassin curses colourfully as she nearly trips on her dress again, using Tamara's retrieval of her weapon as a chance to slice the dress to her knees, kicking off her heels. Astrid glances down at her own dress, and I wonder if she's contemplating doing the same. Remind me why you came here again? You know my story, Malik. You know how bad my memory is. Astrid sighs heavily, and I half expect her not to continue, but she says, I was an orphan. I never knew my parents. I grew up in the back streets of Austrash, never knowing what was coming. When I was about 10, I was caught in a street fight. I was outnumbered and certain I was going to die when Horace found me and fought off the boys. He took me under his wing and made me his apprentice, said I was a fighter, and had the blood for it. He gave me the option of studying and training as an assassin, or be sent to a brothel. Of course I chose the former. It wasn't until a couple of years later that I learned it was the king who was responsible for the death of my family. Becoming his crown assassin is the best chance I have to killing him. Astrid's eyes find mine, and despite the fight that's going on, despite the fact that tonight could be my last, I find myself being lost in her gaze, soaking up the wildfire that flickers beneath the surface. When you fight, remember that. Remember why you're doing this. A shout echoes across the hall, and my breath catches as Cecilia shoves Tamara to the floor, the girl frantically reaching for the knives, lying about a metre from her. Blood drips from Cecilia's nose and mouth as she drives her blade down, angling it towards Tamara's heart, stopping a hair's breadth from her chest. The audience applauds, and I exhale, knowing this is far from over. Skylar stands. Cecilia proceeds to the next round. Tamara, you were eliminated from the competition. The blonde clambers to her feet, anger and shame flashing her cheeks scarlet. Cecilia wipes her face on the back of her hand, smearing blood as she returns her sword, and steps to the side of the room. Next, Curtis and Malik. I roll my shoulders and neck, not bothering with the goodbye to Astrid, not wanting to make it harder than it already is. My competitor is a lanky lad, a few years shy of 20, with a messy mop of chestnut curls and a nose that appears to have been broken more than once. A selected broadsword stepping into a fighting stance, as Curtis does the same. Despite his young age, the kid is a demon with a blade, Skylar bailing having called start when he's barreling towards me, sword flashing. Yet having spent months training with him, I know that he favours his right leg, after leaving his left side exposed. This time is no different, and I drive my blade into his ribs. The boy gasps, winded, bouncing back. I advance, strike, thrust, parry. The steps become a dance, and as I hone in my target, the crowd disappears around me. Sweat drips from Curtis's brow, and his eyes narrow into slits as he frantically fights. His technique has improved, but I know his skills lie in poisons more than combat. Minutes pass, and I wind up winning, shoving a brutal kick to his abdomen, finishing with a knockout blow to his head with the hilt of the blade as he crumples to the floor. Applause echoes in my ears as I walk away, discarding the sword, standing beside Cecilia. Astrid is called next, selecting a rapier. She removes her mask and slices her dress to just above the knees, kicking off her heels, rolling her shoulders as she faces her opponent. A giant of a man, Pedro towers over her. Broad-chested and bulging muscles, he swings his mace, a grin promising death on his flabby lips. Ready to dance, little bird? Astrid smiles, allowing some of the wildfire to dance in her eyes. Are you? Petro doesn't give Astrid a chance to breathe, closing the distance between them in a matter of strides. Astrid ducks as the mace sails over her head, darting forward, blade nicking Petro's side, drawing blood. Keeping low, she sidesteps, appearing behind him, poking his back. Petro roars, giving chase. A tendril of smoke, she slips and weaves around him, goading him, keeping just out of range. But Petro's size has its advantages. He soon realizes Astrid's tactic and stops chasing, putting her on the attack. Astrid has to get closer to hit him, coming within deadly range of the mace. It slices through the air and catches her on the thigh. She jabs through his throat. Blood flows, and Astrid's cry of pain tears at my heart. Just a person. Competition. Rival. The wound slows Astrid down as her favouring her left leg. She's tiring, strikes weaker, and she barely misses another 2 blows that would have ended her. Cecilia curses under her breath, and as Astrid stumbles, shoved to the ground, I instinctively step forward, ready to tear Pedro apart. Breathe. Not your fight. Astrid's gasping, sprawled on the floor. Pedro laughs, stepping closer, stamping on her fingers. Astrid cries out, releasing her sword, which Pedro sends scattering across the tiles. Confidence making him arrogant, he spins his mace high above his head. Astrid aims a brutal kick to his knee, causing the joint to buckle. Pedro staggers, and quick as lightning, Astrid lunges, driving her sword into his chest. The big man topples backwards, slamming onto the floor with a deafening thud. Astrid staggers away, coated in blood, chest heaving. Stunned silence precedes applause, and I realize that my two friends are in the final. Astrid seems to realize this too, for the colour drains from her face as she joins us. Pedro's body is removed from the tiles, and I wonder how Astrid's coping. She's a skilled actress, yet her eyes are doused with pain and something almost like regret. The final round will consist all three of you. Each person is for themselves, and same rules apply, Skylar announces. 5-minute rest, and the competition resumes. The orchestra strikes up a far too merry tune, and Astrid sags onto the floor, legs finally giving way beneath her. Cecilia is immediately by her side, ordering some stranger to fetch a bandage. I kneel next to them, forcing limbs to move as my head reels, knowing that we might not walk out of here alive. I'm okay, Astrid remarks, and Cecilia shoots her a glare. Kiss my ass, you are. You fought well, I tell Astrid. You too. The 5 minutes is far too short, and we're called to the fight. Cecilia helps Astrid to her feet, the young assassin wincing as she puts pressure on her injured leg. You can surrender, Cecilia whispers. There's no shame in doing so. Astrid shakes her head, that wildfire returning. I can do this. Cecilia doesn't press further, stalking over to the rack, this time choosing the double knife. Astrid and I retain our swords. Begin, Skylar shouts. The three of us remain rooted to the spot. Astrid's face is ghostly white, and the hasty bandage Cecilia wrapped round her thigh has soaked through with blood. Cecilia notices too, and we all know that Astrid's the easiest target. But whoever said assassins are without honour can go and piss themselves. Cecilia strikes me first, and despite this being the final challenge, with Astrid and I obstacles in her path to champion, she gives our friend a chance to fight. Astrid attacks Cecilia from behind, but her blow is weak, and Cecilia blocks it, slicing for my head. I duck, swipe low, and shove her away, attention on Astrid. I ignore the ache in my heart, the part of me that loves her, and fight. Astrid matches me blow for blow, pushing against the pain. Cecilia joins her and the two girls attack and sink, but I'm taller and have more muscle, and both are injured. I ram a kick into Cecilia's stomach, sending her staggering backwards. I then follow up with a downward strike. Cecilia screams as my blade slices her arm, cutting to the bone. I go in for another blow, but my sword clashes with Astrid's. She steps in front of Cecilia, and there's nothing of the girl I've come to trust, to love, in her eyes. Only a death stare that chills my bones. Don't trust anyone. Astrid is a whirlwind of fire and darkness, some renewed strength giving her power. Blood wells as her blade nicks my forearm. As brutal as it is, I slice at her injured leg. Astrid gasps, knees buckling, and I follow it with a kick to the ribs. The next blow sends her sword flying. Yet this girl didn't make it to the top of the ladder without hard work and skill. Astrid doesn't back down. She brings her fists up to her face, and I discard my sword, matching her stance. Astrid moves first. Jab, cross hook. I slam another kick to her side as she moves out of the way, sucking in air. I follow it with a double punch to the head. Astrid cops the first, but dodges the second, sidestepping and ramming a kick into my groin, blood trickling from her lips. I crumple, cursing colourfully, eyes watering. Astrid shoves a kick to my ribs and I gasp, yet I don't go down without a fight. I grab her leg, pulling her down next to me, wrapping my arms around her waist. Astrid jams her elbow into my ribs and uses the slight slacking of my grip to scramble out of the way. I catch her, pinning her to the floor beneath me, straddling her. Astrid squirms but isn't strong enough to dislodge me. My hands find her throat and squeeze. Competition, rival, enemy. Astrid claws at my fingers, fear dousing some of the wildfire. I press hard and she stops struggling, knowing it's futile. I lean forward, my chest directly over hers, the pounding of our hearts matching beat for beat. Astrid's right hand drops to her side, and her eyes betray her fear. I'm sorry, I whisper, blinking back tears. Competition, rival, enemy, friend, lover. There's a prick of pain in my side that grows, burning hotter, and I cry out. My hands release Astrid's throat, the assassin gulping down a huge breath as she shoves one of Cecilia's knives into my side. I'm sorry, Astrid croaks, but you are right. I have far too much to fight for. Black spots dance in my vision, and I fight to remain conscious, the room spinning, Astrid's sapphire eyes holding mine. Skylar's words echoing in my head. Don't trust anyone. Astrid kneels beside me, her lips brushing mine, and for a brief moment I taste the wildfire on her lips, feel it spark in my veins before darkness swoops in, dousing it all to ashes.